Welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about word problems via the Singapore Bar Method. So this is a really nice method that allows us to visualize word problems. So let's take a look at an example. So imagine you're taking a math test and you get to this problem. Albert and Cuthbert each took the exam. Albert got double the minimum passing score. Cuthbert got 20% more than the minimum passing score, and then it asks for the ratio of Albert's score to Cuthbert's score. So pause the video now, give this a try, see what you can come up with, and then later at the end of the video, after we've learned some methods, we'll return to this problem. Okay, now there's no one right approach to solving word problems like this. There's always many different ways, but the Singapore Bar Method is one that gives us a nice visualization and a good algebraic starting point if this is the first time you're learning to do these problems before we get into more complicated symbols. So I'm going to give 3 different steps to start us off with the Singapore Bar Method. So the first step is to determine what the whole is. So whatever our problem might be trying to represent, maybe money or maybe an exam score, something is a whole amount. And we're going to represent that with a rectangle, just a simple box to represent that amount. Now, if you're using this method and you have a bar and you have that amount represented again, make sure you keep that rectangle the same size. Don't change the size of the rectangle. It'll make a nice visualization of what's going on if you keep your rectangles in the same size. So next, we're going to divide up our rectangle into smaller chunks. So maybe the question says something like 50% of an amount. Now, if you have 50%, well, that is the same as 50 out of 100, 50 parts out of 100 parts. But it's always easier to reduce these fractions as much as possible. It reduces our diagram. We don't want to be taking up our rectangle here and chopping it up into 50 different slices. We'd rather just chop it right into half. So in our case, if we have this size of rectangle, and the question happened to say 50%, we would chop it in half. So we may also need to divide our rectangle by different proportions. Maybe there's more than one division that needs to be made. So what we can do is have horizontal and vertical lines. So let's draw a picture to get an example. So maybe one of the proportions that we have is 25%, and maybe the other is 2/3. Now, 25% is the same as 1/4. We don't want to write 25 over 100. So we're again going to draw our rectangle. This time I'll draw it bigger because I'm planning to draw both horizontal and vertical lines. So I'll draw my vertical lines first. What I'm going to do is chop this into half and then into quarters. So maybe first we have 1/4. So I'll shade in that amount. Maybe we have 1/4 of the whole, if that's what our question says. And then maybe we have 2/3 of the remainder. So if that's the remainder, then what I'm going to do with my next division is draw horizontal lines, and I'm going to chop it up into thirds. So if I have 2/3 of the remainder, it would be this amount. So building these diagrams is going to help us solve the original problem when we put it all together. Now, probably a key piece in using the Singapore Bar Method is to find the value of the smallest unit. So in this above example, when we divide it up, by a quarter and then by 2/3, we want to know what this unit size is. As soon as we know that, depending on the question, maybe this is maybe $2 or something like that, then we would know what 2 of those boxes represent. It would represent $4, and so on and so on. And from there, you can normally figure out the problem or the answer to the problem in whatever it might be asking. And let's make sure to use dollar signs or grams or meters to represent the problem. Okay, so let's use these steps that we just went over in this example. So step 1, identify the whole. Okay, so let's read the problem. It says Lauren spent 20% of her money on a dress, and she spent 3/4 on a book. She had $18 left. How much money did she have at first? So the whole that we're looking for here is the amount of money. So let's draw a bar to represent that. So here is our Singapore Bar. Okay, now step 2, now that we have that bar, we want to decide how do we divide it up. Okay, so in this case, we're given 2 numbers in the problem. One is 20% and the other is 3/4, and it's 3/4 of the remainder. So first there's 20% of the whole. So let's start there. Let's think about the 20%. And 20% is the same as 20 over 100, or 1/5. So we're going to divide up our bar into 5 equal parts, as equal as possible. So there's 3, there's 4, there's our 5 parts. And we are told that 20% is spent on the dress. So that's our first division. I'll mark this division in red. And I'll mark down D for dress. Okay, the next number that we have is 3/4 of the remainder. Now we could use horizontal bars. We could chop it up into quarters going horizontal, but just notice that we already have 4 bars. This is the remainder right here, right? That's the remainder. And there's already 4 bars there. So we're told that 3 out of those 4 are spent on the book. So let's shade in that amount. This is the book. And the final piece of information that we have is the leftover amount. The leftover of the division is 18. So this amount here is 18 leftover. Okay, now we're on to the final step, step 3, where we want to find the value of the smallest unit. And in this particular case, we chopped our rectangle up into 5 different sections, and the question directly told us that the smallest unit is 18 in size. Now we're ready to analyze what did the question ask for. It said how much money did she have overall. So it's asking for the whole. So there's 5 parts of this 18 that make up the whole. So what we have to do is take our number 18, multiply it by 5 to get the whole, which is 90. So $90 is the correct answer to this problem. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Okay, so reading this problem, Bob spent 2/5 of his money on a shirt and then 1/4 of the remainder on a tie. So this left him with $63 left over, and we're asked for how much money did the shirt cost. Okay, so let's see if we can put all the steps together in one fluent motion here. Okay, so the whole in our case is again how much money. So you can just write down M for money if you like, and we'll draw our bar. Okay, and the first number we're given is 2/5. So 2/5 of the money is on the shirt. So we'll color code that in red, 2/5 of the money on the shirt. So let's divide up our box into 5 equal bars as best as we can. Okay, and 2 of those bars are for the shirt. So let's shade in red this for the shirt. So S for shirt. So moving on, the next one that we have is 1/4 of the remainder on the tie. So we don't have 4 parts left over in the remainder like we did last time. So this is my remainder and there's just 3 bars there. So this time I'm going to divide up our box into horizontal lines so we have quarters to work with as well. So 1/4 of the remainder was spent on a tie. So back to the green, this part here in green is the tie. So 1/4 of the remainder is spent on the tie. Okay, now dividing up further, this left us with 63. So this amount is the leftover amount. So I'm just going to box all that in yellow and say that's the left amount. That's what's left over after we read the first sentence. And that amount was $63. So we take 63 and we say, oh, there's 9 boxes left over. So we'll divide up that 63 by 9 and we get 7. So we've completed the maybe most critical part to find that smallest unit, which is 7. And now we should be able to answer the question. It says, how much did the shirt cost? Let's remember the shirt was in red, so the shirt was this amount here, and there is 8 parts there. So let's get our red pen back out. The shirt is going to equal 8 times 7 in amount. So the total is $56. Okay, so your turn. Okay, so a very similar problem. Again, Bob spent 2/5 of his money on a shirt, but this time it says and 1/4 on a tie. So the previous problem said 1/4 of the remainder on a tie. Now it just says 2/5 of the whole and 1/4 of the whole. So again, $63 were left over. How much money did the shirt cost? So see if you can figure out this problem with a little tweak that we threw in there. Okay, so the problem is similar to above. The whole, again, is money. So there's our box representing money. And 2/5, again, were spent on a shirt. So that starting place is really very similar to above. 2/5 of the whole on a shirt. So we can shade in that part and write S for the shirt. But then also 1/4 of the whole was spent on a tie. So again, we're going to make divisions going horizontally to make 1/4. But now we have to decide how much of the whole is 1/4. So how much is 1/4 on a tie? Well, 1/4 of the whole would be this amount. That's 1, and the whole thing is separated into 4 quarters if you look horizontally. So this amount has 5 of the smallest unit. So I'm going to mark in, take my green pen out again, and mark in T for tie. Those are all ties. So that's the tie in green there. This time the leftover amount is this kind of funny shape here. Again, it's $63, but this time there's only 7 units within that $63. So this time we have our smallest unit as 63 divided by 7, and this time that's 9. So our smallest unit is 9. So now returning to the shirt, again, we're asking how much did the shirt cost. This time around, we would say that, well, there's 8 boxes there, and our box each represents $9. So in total, it's $72 on the shirt. So we can see that it's very important to read, carefully. Is it, 1/4 of the whole, or is it 1/4 of the remainder like it was in the previous problem? Okay, let's look at the next example. Okay, so this problem is going to add a little bit more of a issue to the mix. It's going to require us to think about more than one whole unit. Okay, so Paula poured some cereal into a bowl. The total weight of the cereal in the bowl is 110 grams. Then her roommate Sarah joins her and pours thrice the amount of cereal into an identical bowl. So the two bowls are exactly identical in weight. The total weight of the roommate Sarah's bowl and cereal is 290 grams. And our question is, what is the weight of the cereal that Sarah poured into her bowl? Okay, so we need to start by carefully drawing our picture out here. And like I said before, there's 2 whole units to consider. There's the cereal, which is an amount. So we're interested in the cereal. I'll call that amount C. So the C for the cereal amount. That can be a whole amount that if we like as we're reading on. But there's also the bowl in consideration. So I'll say that's B for bowl. And these 2 parts make up the total weight that Paula is considering with her cereal and her bowl. So we should mark that down in our diagram as 110. Okay, now we get to read forward. So the next sentence says, after the 110 grams, Sarah pours 3 times as much cereal into an identical bowl. So let's draw the picture that represents that. It's 3 times as much, so we'll try to keep this amount here the same. We have that box and that box. I mean, the picture should be kind of approximately the same in size, as best as we can. And then there's the red amount at the end representing the bowl. So we'll say B for bowl, and this C amount is this original amount of cereal that Paula poured into the bowl. And then finally we're told that this whole amount here is 290. And our job is to figure out how much cereal Sarah poured in her bowl. So this first amount here is for Paula, and the second amount is for Sarah. And we do know that 1 blue box and 1 red box, those 2 parts make 110. So let's mark that in. This amount here is 110. And then the leftover amount would have to add up to 290. So we are left with 180 in amount. So this amount here must be 180 because 180 plus 110 is 290. And the objective, just like before, is to find that smallest unit. Our smallest unit in this case is 90. So 3 90s makes up the amount that Sarah has in terms of her weight of cereal. What is the weight of cereal that Sarah poured in her bowl? Well, 3 times 90 is 270. So 270 grams is our answer. And if you're curious, the bowl happened to weigh 20 grams. I did take this problem from the internet. If you want to check out someone else's solution to this, you can check out that link if you like. All right, so here's our challenge for today: to return to the warm-up problem and see if you can use the tools to solve it. So pause now and see if you can get it. Okay, so I'll explain my solution to this problem. So Albert and Cuthbert each took the exam. As we're reading through, it first says that Albert got double the minimum passing score. So the minimum passing score, I'm going to call that M, and I'm going to write down a bar to represent M. And it says that Albert, so if we're marking down Albert, he got double that amount. So Albert's score is represented by that picture. Now Cuthbert got 20% more than the minimum passing score. So here's my minimum passing score, that's my M value. Now I'll draw Cuthbert down here. So Cuthbert did get the minimum passing score, so I'll draw that box in the same amount. Then Cuthbert got 20% more than that as well. So now I need to take my 20% more, think about that amount, and 20% is the same as 1/5 in a fraction. So I'd like to chop up this amount in 5 different sections and add 1/5 of that section. So if I draw in one more bar here, one more little 1/5 bar. Now I want to find the ratio of Albert's score to Cuthbert's score. Let's do the same division that we did for Cuthbert to Albert. Remember, we divided it into fifths. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2, 3, 4, and 5. So in terms of parts, Albert has 10 parts and Cuthbert has 6 parts. So what is the ratio of Albert's score to Cuthbert's score? Albert's score would be 10 parts to Cuthbert's score of 6 parts. Okay, thank you so much for listening and learning about the Singapore Bar Method, and we'll see you on the next one.